day-to-day kinds of things that can be done and done well should be on this island.
Okay.
Things like repairs of the broken hip of the elderly, joint replacements, treatment of most kinds, but not all kinds, of open fractures. The only reason I'm concentrating on bones is because that's where my training was. Mm-hmm. But there are other areas like chronic heart disease, like chronic lung disease, things like that that can also be handled on this island. And if you've got a well-designed, centralized hospital unit, then you can give immediate care and obviously transfer the things that you can't take care of. Furthermore, modern information technology and telemedicine is a whole new area. You can have effectively the cognitive ability of the best specialists in the world who can be 500 miles away and still be virtually attached to your patient, as we will see in the future. Now,
well, in some cases, you have doctors who aren't even there taking care of people over some kind of, I don't know what it is.
Some kind of an internet hookup.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, you can look at it that
That
way.
does exist. Not saying we're advocating that here, but that is something that exists.
And not only does that exist, that's the way things are going to happen as time goes by.
You can certainly get consults with the best people that way who may not be physically here.
Absolutely. Furthermore, we are talking about the astronomical costs of medical care. A lot of things that are done in a hospital can be done at home, provided you can monitor the patients remotely. In other words, the sophisticated machines that you can get hooked up to in a hospital, you can be hooked up to at home if there is somebody nearby that's watching the output of those machines and can deal with the problems that they're designed to indicate. And that's also essential. Then hospitals bring in physicians. A doctor, in order to practice these days, requires other doctors around. There's a social element of medical learning. If you don't get a chance to talk to other people who are dealing with similar problems, you tend to narrowly fall into a rut. In a field that is as rapidly changing as modern healthcare, that's not going to work.
Dave, if I can add into something, Doc made a very important point before, and the point was that the old Long Beach Medical Center was a very large organization with a lot of complexities and some problems. What we're proposing is not a replacement of that full hospital with all those beds and
so what is it? What is it that we're
Well, I
proposing?
think Doc really said what happens. There are selected kinds of services that, because of our unique medical needs of our community, should best be served in our community.
It may be a semantic question, but is that still a hospital? Is that what you call that, a hospital? But it's just hospital that has different, embraces different services.
It's a medical services unit, and that's what the future's all about. So maybe the name you're putting into a pigeonhole with the name.
It's
some place that takes care of those chronic and critical issues, all right, and protects those people who are being monitored at home. They need, when their monitoring is called in, they need to be able to go to someplace close, not far away.
So let's get back to you in a second about some of the commercial aspects,
Right.
the marketing aspects. But I interrupted you.
Yeah, well, I think what's important is Doc's statement recognizes that certain kinds of medical services are best provided here because of our unique medical needs, and others are best provided in another facility, perhaps at South Nassau, or perhaps at a burn center. So we're recognizing that there are distinctive elements of the medical needs, and we want to respond to those unique, distinctive needs in the right way, really trying to materially enhance the medical quality of life for the patients that are not only our residents, but also the visitors to our island.
And I think it starts with making very clear to residents that we are not talking about bringing back the old hospital, which I think people somehow leap to that right away and say, oh my goodness. And they did some good things too. But we were talking about bringing in the technologies and the interaction with the medical community at large that would really serve our particular population best.
Dave, that's an important point, because one of the things that happens is people think that we're opposed to South Nassau. Really what we're trying to do is work with South Nassau to meet the needs of this community. And it's in that working relationship that we're trying to find out, how can we as a community help them? How can they help us? It's that communication that's really critical. And so there have been some advances in that, and shortly I'll sort of discuss a couple of things that have happened over the last year. Some pluses and some things that still need to be added for us to get the right solution. We've taken some steps with South Nassau, with some of the elected officials, with the voices of our community. Progress has been made in the revised proposal from South Nassau. However, there are still gaps. And later on we'll describe what some of those gaps are, what our proposals are to respond to them. And I think people, when they listen to that, will better understand that the solution we're seeking is better than what South Nassau is proposing, and more importantly, does result in a much healthier community. That's important.
Okay, let me get back to Mark, and then we will get back to that content, about the financial and commercial / social aspects of having a hospital or not having a hospital, having a 24-hour emergency care. Help me understand that.
Let's go back to understand the commercial and impact on the community. Let's go back a couple of years. In the 1920s, when this was a playground for the rich and famous, the first thing Senator Reynolds did when he wanted to develop Lido Estates was build a hospital. He understood we were on a barrier island, that if he was going to sell homes and develop businesses to service those homes, he needed to protect his community. And that's something that's lacking at this moment in our community, because we don't have that protection. So he built the hospital, and today Long Beach is the 35th most densely populated city in the United States. 35th.
Wow.
So it gives you an idea.
Wow.
All right. And that's not talking about the 35 to 50,000 people who come back onto this island from the months of June, July, August.
Without that.
So that's without that. All right.
But this is density, by the way. It's not total numbers. But
It's not
density.
total. It's density. It's density.
People per square mile. Or
People
something.
per square mile. People. Right. So, but it's a service that you have to do. So when you lose the hospital, you don't have your protection to the community. Now, with that hospital, the old hospital, out of the community for one moment, just to look at how it's created an impact, you've lost over 2,200 jobs and roughly 600
Were
doctors.
they the biggest employer in town?
Yes, they were the biggest employer.
I thought
Roughly 600 doctors as
Gone.
well. Gone.
I know
If-
some of these people, not the doctors, but I know some of the other people, and they had to really struggle.
Right. And if you look at that, and if you just take $10, $12 a day that they spent into the community, going to the gas station, going into the deli,
Yeah.
going into the bagel place, buying a newspaper, getting their dry cleaning done,
Excellent point.
especially the doctors.
Yeah.
All right. And I've gotten this feedback from the businesses, being the president of the Chamber of Commerce, which I am now President Emirates. You have taken roughly $8 million to $10 million commerce out of this community.
Every year.
Per year. That's a big
Wow.
number. That's a
Wow.
huge number. You have real estate agents who've addressed to me that when they show homes, people ask, do you have a hospital? You know, it used to be, do you have the school as the top? It's, well, how is the school system? Now is, do you have a hospital, or when are you getting the hospital back? So it's a major concern when new people are buying to come in, because we still have a lot of empty homes that have to be sold. And as the doc started to talk about, you have iStar developing a development that'll be some 1,100 people. You have a development that's going to be developed down at the West End that'll probably bring 1,000 people in as well. So you bring it to the number, and we want those. We want our community to grow. We want our businesses
There's
to
people
grow.
and cars that it creates a need, and it can inhibit transportation to the other hospitals.
And you could attribute some of the empty stores that we have today from the lack of commerce because of not having a hospital. And that's not necessarily the reason you have a hospital, but that's part of building
Everything's
a community. You have a school system, you have a library system, you have a hospital system. We've also lost all of our imaging places, or all of our medical associated businesses have moved out of town. So nobody, if you have to have an image, if you fall and need an image, or something, you have to go off the island. So it's of paramount interest to keep this island safe, and the residents feel that it's safe, and all the visitors coming into town, swimming on the weekend, feel it's safe. You have to have
point, too.
some sort of hospital, or if you want to call it, medical delivery services system.
Right. And by the way, these the people leaving town and some of the businesses that are shuttered, that all affects the tax rolls too. So it affects the city
100%.
budget. It's everything's connected to everything else.
Right.
So Ed touched on something that was really what I wanted to ask next, and that is the road forward. What is the road forward? Is there one? What's the plan? Who have we talked to? And what's going to happen? I mean, I kind of assumed, well, we have this this emergency, 24-hour emergency place, and that's it. As unfair as it sounds, and this is an assumption that I made as just as a resident, and I don't know. I don't have any other information. I look at the emails now and then when I can, but so fill us in on what is happening and what can we expect.
Barbara mentioned before that one of the primary goals of the Beach Bay organization is to really represent the community in whatever ways we can. And so that's been accomplished in a number of ways. You mentioned the April 2015 forum that was held. Clearly, hundreds of people came to that meeting and expressed, sometimes in very loud voices, their desire, not only desire, their need, their palpable need for a hospital. They recognized what they had lost. They also recognized what they need. How else have we found out about the community? Well, we actually have thousands of either petitions or emails or phone calls from our residents which have expressed their thoughts, once again consistent with that. We've also spoken with the elected officials, and that's quite important. So trying to work with the different elected officials, recognizing that they're supposed to represent the community. Let's take an example. What's one of the primary goals of the city council? To protect the health of the community. So we're working with Todd Kaminsky, we're working with a number of the other representatives there, trying to get their input. We've worked with representatives from the Senator's office, Gillibrand and Schumer. We've worked with representatives from the Governor's office, from Congresswoman Rice's office, and very importantly, not only working with the community, and not only working with the elected representatives, we have met with South Nassau very frequently. And there has been progress made. So example, they came out with a proposal probably about 6 months ago for a medical pavilion. Since then, in some meetings, they've actually made some embellishments to that plan. So originally it was going to have a $40 million investment and provide a limited number of capabilities.
So do we for something like that, or for whatever we'll develop going forward, we have to really work with them because the money flowed from the government to South Nassau. And does this have to be done under the auspices of South Nassau? Is it?
Well, it's a process that has a number of different parts involved. So obviously because South Nassau's plan is dependent on using FEMA money, and we haven't mentioned it, it's of the order of magnitude of around $170 or so million involved.
And they've received that, or
No.
that's what the
That's
idea?
under the Schumer press release, what has been approved by Congress for FEMA is that amount of money to be spent. Further,
For medical care and for
for
them
the
particularly?
phrase that we used before,
Oh,
to rebuild.
for medical services that are needed by the site.
That's the FEMA award to rebuild
Okay.
the medical
Thank you
services
for.
in the form of the Long Beach Medical Center that we lost.
So as part of that government process, recently they issued an environmental report. So the FEMA environmental report had some recommendations in it. What our organization has done just recently has responded to that report. So it's important for the community to recognize, first, that there is this environmental assessment. It was unfortunately only announced in a very small ad in a newspaper. So the chance for the community to really to see it was limited. what we did as Beach to Bay is we then communicated to all of the civic organizations that this was an important assessment. And we welcomed their comments, not only to us, but also to write to FEMA. And we know a number of people, both political as well as community members and leaders, who have actually commented to FEMA saying they feel that the environmental assessment is one that is not representative of our need, and that the proposal is one that does not respond to our needs. So we've done that communication. Additionally now, once you get past that process, the whole concept is, in the South Nassau proposal, that $40 million or so will go to Long Beach. And the balance will be used to increase the infrastructure in the Oceanside facility. That's under the alternative use provision. It's sort of an awkward term that most folks probably don't understand. What it basically says is that FEMA has decided that the money doesn't necessarily have to be spent in Long Beach, that it could be spent in alternative use, perhaps in Oceanside. We've actually just initiated a suit with FEMA and questioning whether or not that allocation is in fact legally appropriate.
So let's clarify. The Civic Association, Beach to Bay, is suing FEMA over that, saying that, go ahead.
Where we are asking a court to determine if the alternative use, the way South Nassau has provided, is allowable. We're asking for a judgment call at this point with the FEMA. I think it's important. There are two things that we also need to touch upon, which is everybody is kind of looking at the Vladeck report. Dr. Vladeck we had met with, and there are major gaps in that report, and therefore for me the report is not valid. Doc can speak to that point by point if you're interested, but the Vladeck report is not a true reflection of our demographics nor of our needs. So that's number one. The other thing is the REMAC. The REMAC is issued by Nassau County.
What is the REMAC?
The REMAC, I don't know what it stands for, but it's
what is it,
the emergency vehicles, what they're allowed to bring to our freestanding emergency room and what they are not allowed to bring. The most important life-threatening incidences that occur on this barrier island are not allowed to go to this emergency room by ambulance.
Really?
Really.
So if you have a stroke, as an example, you're not allowed to go by ambulance to the existing emergency facility. Instead, you must be transported elsewhere.
Same thing
Or
with
someone's
the-
got to drive you there, I
Right.
guess.